welcome back to another episode of the Female Empowered Podcast. I have one of my favorite people of all time on the show, Latasha Doyle, founder and CEO. Where'd that come from? That is, I'm
Didn't
sorry,
even,
you guys. Like we're recording on Zoom and they just had like a thing pop up of like a thumb up, and I was like,
but
did
like
she
I
make
didn't
that
even do a
graphic?
thumb up.
Maybe it just heard
But
my
like you can do that and it like gestures.
Yeah, maybe
But
I just heard my graphic. Maybe I'd heard my gesture and my voice, and they were like so excited. That's how excited I am. So Latasha is founder and CEO of Uncanny Content, who's been my content copywriting, talk me down off the ledge, um, basically organized my whole life company for the last 4 years at least. And now we just launched, she actually has two other brands that she has launched since then. But what we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to have you introduce yourself, Latasha, because maybe someone's listening to this for the first time and doesn't know who you are and how amazing you are. But we are going to talk about when your website could actually be working against you as especially a brick and mortar business owner. So Latasha, take it away and please tell the audience who you are and why you're so special to me.
okay, well, I'll get into what I know, which is that I am a strategist and copywriter, and we help people figure out how to get their websites, their businesses seen by more people by creating strategic copy and content. We work with small women-owned businesses, whether that's brick and mortar, online, or a blend of both. And I have worked with you since August of 2020, I believe. So just shy of 4 years, actually, which is weird because I feel like we've known each other for forever.
Forever.
But I work with you inside of the inner circle to basically help people with copy critiques and then also kind of guiding them through things like, what happens if you lose a sale, like a lead, and how can you recapture that? What's your social media strategy look like? We work really closely with the people inside of the inner circle to help them kind of figure out their strategy as well.
Yeah. And she's been amazing. And the fact that she's put up with me for almost 4 years is pretty good. She stuck around. Um, One of the things that people will hear me say all the time, and it's Latasha, you have helped me with this a ton, is things when we talk about marketing, list building, sales, like it has to be a strategy, right? It has to be like I don't care what you call it, like 4-prong, three, like whatever you call it, but there has to be some sort of strategy involved, not just like I'm going to start an email list
Yeah.
or I'm going to create a blog. Like, what is the strategy? And so, what we're going to talk about today is, well, I'd love for you to say like what role your website serves in the strategy, because I do definitely think over the last 10 years, websites have changed a little bit because now with the not resurgence, like of social media, and then people buying on websites. So the goal of a website has changed, certainly. So can you first start by telling us what your website, what part in like the strategy our website serves? Let's talk specifically about like brick and mortar businesses, since online is a little bit of a different beast. So let's just talk about brick and mortar
Yeah.
businesses.
So I think to your point about over the last like 10 years, things have really changed. 10 years ago, if you had a website, it was like, holy shit, you really got your stuff together. Even if the website sucked, it was just like, oh, wow, that's a website. Like, that's actually pretty fancy for like, especially a brick and mortar. Online businesses have been in existence for, 10 to 15 years now, I think. But especially for brick and mortars to have like an actual website outside of just like a map listing has been
Mhm.
pretty impressive. Uh, we are in an age where websites are no longer optional, they are non negotiable, they have to exist. With that said, though, it's not just slapping up any old website and just being like, it's up there, people know I exist, it's good. You have to have a very strategic website now that makes it easy for people to book or call or work with you in some way, or else you're going to lose that lead. People want to go to a website now to take action. They don't care if it's phone call. I mean, millennials and Gen Z, they do care. They don't want to make the phone call.
That's
But
correct.
they will, you know, they'll fill out your contact form, they will call you, they will schedule an appointment online, things like that. And they want to know exactly what you provide, and they want to know that you provided it to people exactly like you. So if you are specialized in any way, this is really great news because it's very easy to show, like, hey, you know, I'm a pelvic floor PT that has only helped women, you know, only. I specialize in helping women with diastasis recti.
Mhm. Yep,
I'm not sure which one.
you got it.
But you know, that's a very specific niche, right? And there are things with SEO, which I can get into a little bit later, that make it easier for you to get found. But if you are a more general provider, this is where like testimonials, reviews, things like that can really shine to say, you know, hey, I helped Bob when he blew out his knee on the golf course, you know, get back to, you know, doing the back nine, like whatever that is, that, you know, you can really show your expertise, and you can optimize your site in a way that makes it easy for people to find you. But the strategy is everything.
Yes, the strategy is everything. I do believe that so there used to be, well, I think there still is this back and forth between how much information do you put on your website, and do you, you know, especially the thing when it comes to like pricing and things of this nature. So back in the day, people would call you and they would reach out to you and they wanted you to have the conversation. What is your opinion and feeling now? And maybe it's different with different businesses, but like I don't want to talk to anyone unless I'm throwing down like $1,000. Then maybe I want to talk to a person. But I just want to know, like, how can I give you money? And I don't want to talk to you. So what is your feeling, or what are you seeing in
Yeah.
the world now?
So I think the big thing is that I have seen providers, whether it's, you know, PT practitioners, Pilates studio owners, like fitness, dance studio owners that have a lot on their calendar, like classes, sessions, whatever it needs to be. They do not automate the booking process, even for existing clients or students or members or whatever they want to call it. They are still manually doing all of the stuff. And I know that a couple of people inside the inner circle are going to feel called out. I'm so sorry. I have been talking to them about this, that like you guys are actually spending so much of your time just looking at calendars, just emailing people like, oh, does 10 a.m. on Tuesday work for you? No, okay, well, what about 4 p.m. on Thursday? It sounds so small, right? Like these little back and forth things. It takes so much time. And if you want to grow and you want to make it easy for people to keep working with you, automate your booking process, at least for existing customers, clients, students, patients, whatever you need to call them. Automate that process. Now, if you need to do an assessment before you know, accept somebody into your practice or into your classes or whatever that is, I get it. You need to have that assessment. You can make that assessment easy to book with a scheduling tool. There's Acuity, there's Calendly, there through Jane app, you can schedule stuff through MindBody online. You can do that through what I don't even know what the other ones are.
Yeah.
There's so many, but you can have that where it's okay, schedule your assessment, whether it's virtual or in person. And then after that, you can say, okay, now you get this special schedule link to like book your own classes or whatever it is. I know that there's some pushback here because they're like, well, not everybody is right for me. Or I did have a very unique situation come up where it was like, actually, I work with psychiatrists and then their patients also get referred to me, and I cannot have them cross paths in any way, shape, or form. So those instances are good to know, right? Like that does need to be a manual scheduler for that, a free assessment. You can create a scheduler on the back end that's like, this patient only gets this link because they're, you know, this psychiatrist patients and the psychiatrist
Right.
has this link and these times don't overlap. Like you can set that up on the back end, but that is something that you have to have manually. Like that makes sense to have it manual. Um, your contact form needs to be really easy to find, to say like, here's my name, here's my problem, here's my availability, or here's what I'm looking for to submit. You need to have a process to respond to those quickly if you're not going to let people book automatically. And then if you're one of those people that you're like, I want to hear everybody come in through a phone call, I don't know why you want that. As a millennial, that makes me, I itch just thinking about that. But if you do really want to have a phone process, you need to have a solid phone process where it's like intake, you know, name, email, needs, schedule that assessment, and then immediately plug them into whatever system you have that's going to automate that for you. But whatever path or whatever mix of paths you have there, please make sure that you are capturing their email address at all points.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we talk about this a lot. And I think there was, what episode was it that I did? It's before us. So let's see. What's the email one? Back at episode, what episode number is this? This would be podcast episode number 225. So it aired a couple weeks ago. It all talks about email marketing and email metrics and everything. So, okay, well, let's now get into, a lot of times we talk on these podcasts about like what to do. Okay, so let's talk about when our website is not working for us. So you have seen a lot of websites. You have seen several iterations of my own website. So what are something, let's go page by page. Well, not every page, but like, let's start with the homepage. So what are some things that are working against business owners on their home, when they have on their homepage, that are no bueno?
Yeah. So it kind of boils down to two categories. We have the technical and then we have the branding.
Okay.
So the technical errors on a website are things like super slow load time. Okay, people have 3 seconds or less and they're going to bounce away from your site. They do not care if your site is going to load. They don't care if you're the most recommended. If they have a slow site, they're thinking this person doesn't know what they're doing. Bye. The other thing is SEO. I have seen people not lean into SEO because they just don't understand it, right? But it's actually super duper simple. So instead of having like homepage at the top of your homepage, leave your name. Sound like I'm leaving a voicemail. Leave your name and a message after the beep. Leave your like business name and your location and your specialty. Like, so that H1 could be like, for you, it's, Pilates on the Grove, Miami, or, whatever we have there. And it's very clear at the top because that top line on any website is called your H1. And that is the first thing Google crawls after they find your website. They're going to crawl that first H1. So that needs to have your name, your location, and your specialty, at least in the H1 or the line below it.
And that's
People miss
under the
that every
navigation
time.
bar. That's
Yeah.
under the navigation bar. So if you guys think of a website, at the very top, usually in the top left corner is your like logo or whatever, usually. Then you have all that thing on the nav, which is like about services, like you can have drop down menus. So Latasha's talking about the H1, which is like usually what people are talking about, like above the fold, which means you don't have
Yep.
to scroll down. That's H,
Or they'll say it's a banner or
a
something like
banner,
that.
right? And so she's
Yeah.
saying so for Pilates in the Grove, I think we have Miami's best Pilates studio or something to
Yeah.
that effect. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the keywords, and I won't get too far into that. You guys can go back and listen to our SEO episode because that covers kind of all of the SEO juice that you need to know. But that is one of the biggest errors that I see on almost every brick and mortar location, is that they either have their name and nothing else, or they have homepage or orthopedic services, which is great. You have a keyword in there, but you're not saying who you are or where you're located. If you have a brick and mortar, you have to have your location in there. Like, that is non-negotiable. Google won't know where the hell you are if you don't tell them. They're not going to dig. I think people are like, oh, well, I have my, address in the footer, or, I have that on the contact page. Google doesn't care. Google is
Okay.
literally crawling your headers immediately. So it'll crawl metadata, which is when you're on Google, when you type something in Google and you get like the blue links and a little bit of copy underneath it, that's your search engine result page, right? So Google crawls like the blue link and a little bit of that copy that's underneath that blue link. And then they'll crawl your H1. And then they'll crawl your H2, which is like a header that you have in the middle of the page. And usually that's it. Google's like, done, we got it, and we're out. They don't care. They just don't care. So we want to optimize as much as possible. I do recommend going back to listen to that SEO podcast that we did, because I do talk about it a little bit more there.
We'll link that. We'll be sure to link that in the show notes. So what is an example? What is an example of something not to do? So like if take Pilates in the Grove, for example, what would a bad H1 be for Pilates in the Grove? Because
homepage.
Do people really just have homepage on their website?
Oh, all the time. All the time.
Really?
All the time. Yeah.
It says
Yeah.
homepage?
Yeah.
Huh.
The other thing I see a lot is welcome to insert business name, which isn't
Mhm.
horrible, but I would definitely recommend that you update it to, include your location or your specialty. So it's like, recovering from, or postpartum recovery at, Women's Health PT, whatever it is.
Okay.
Um, I would really make it specific to your name and your specialty or your location. And then, below that you can include whichever one you didn't include. The other thing I see a lot is only talking about you, the business. So
Mhm.
it'll just say the business name at the top. So it'll just say, Pilates in the Grove. And it's like, cool. Like that's good. It's got your name in it, but like your name is great because it already kind of explains what you do. But there's other things where it's like, you know, an acronym or a super short name where
Yep.
it's like, I don't know what the hell that means,
Right.
And then they just get into, at insert physical therapy practice, we offer orthopedic rehab, and that's it. And it's not, there's nothing personal about it, and it's
Mhm.
very textbook language, so a little too high level for people who are coming because they blew their ACL. And they're just like, I want to get back to playing pickleball, guys. Like that's it.
Right.
So this is where we get into the brand piece, right? So like the technical is you don't have SEO, you're really not using your headers properly. I see this all the time. People are just not paying attention to that at all. I get it. You don't know how, but now you know. But then we have the brand element, and on their website only talks about them in the third person. So it's, at Pilates in the Grove, we offer Pilates, PT, and rejuvenation services. Our goal is to ensure that our members, you see how it's only
Yeah.
our, we,
Mhm.
that is not what your audience wants to be put in first person. So it's, you are welcome at Pilates in the Grove. We're so excited to help you recover from your injuries or to build your strength or to, experience what Pilates can do for your body. Um, you will find an expert team of PTs and, certified Pilates instructors. You will find top of the range rejuvenation services to help you feel your best, things like that, where it's very you focused.
Yeah. So instead of
Uh,
saying we have this, you're saying you will find
yeah,
this.
you will have
Yeah.
access
You
to,
will
you will
experience
benefit
this.
from,
Yeah.
yeah. So when people are reading that, they're saying, oh, they're talking directly to me instead of
Mhm.
just talking about themselves. And I know that it sounds weird, and I know that you may never have noticed that, but it does actually affect the way people process information.
Definitely. I
And
I can
then,
see that. Yeah.
yeah, and then personality. So I know as PTs or I see this a lot with like yoga too, where they use like the very ethereal language. And then you come to find out that the yoga instructors like from Brooklyn and they're just very down to earth and like no bullshit, right?
Right.
But yet they're still using this like, get in touch with your breath and reconnect to your spirit. And they're like, I don't say that in real
Yeah.
life, but that's just what you have to say. And I'm like, no, that's actually not what you have to say. I work with a lot of PTs who, they're talking about idiopathic is like one of the words that I'm just like, I still don't know what that means. And I have
Nobody
done this
knows.
for years. Um, and they'll use things like I was just talking to somebody in the inner circle and they were talking about myofascial release. And I was like, nobody knows what that means. You mean cupping, but they like your patient is not going to know what that means.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I want them to know that it's technical. It's not just cupping like you get at the massage therapist. And I'm like, I understand that, but like we still have to start with where people understand, right? We still have to start at a base level. But infusing your brand voice, and it's okay if your brand voice is like, you know what, I'm pretty straightforward. I'm not really like perky. I think people think they have to be like really bubbly and fun to have
Yeah.
a website that feels like them. That's not true. Like I work with financial planners and they're some of the dullest people I've ever met. And there's still ways to make that website user friendly to the people who need to work with them to like make sure that they see this is no nonsense. This is what I want, all of that. Um, so yeah, I think that from a branding error perspective, people are using a template and they're just going through and being like, okay, well, this other PT in my area did this, or I worked with like a PT branding company and they gave me this template. I see that a lot. And they're just not customizing it. And
Yeah.
then, a couple of years down the road, when they want to really connect with like, hey, I'm realizing I specialize in working with, 65-year-old women who want to play pickleball all day. Like that's a brand point. Talk about
Yeah.
that. Update your web copy to talk about that, even if it's not your only specialty. But who do you talk to? Is it teams who are trying to be the best at their sport? Speak to them in your web copy, things like that. So yeah, that's the technical is the SEO, and then the brand perspective is really speaking to the client and sharing your expertise in a way that's digestible for them.
Right. Speaking in their language. What is too much to have on a homepage in your opinion?
um, you're going to hear a lot of conflicting advice about this. I would not do more than 500 words. And that
Oh,
includes
okay.
things like tiles. So if you have, like your services where you're like, click here to go to my, Pilates booking page, click here to go to my ortho page, click here to go to my, massage therapy page or whatever you have. There's little blurbs there usually. But yeah, I mean, 500 words is about a page of copy, like on
Okay.
like a Word document.
Yep.
And yours is going to be longer than that probably. It's okay if it's a little bit shorter as long as it's properly optimized, but people try to cram everything into a homepage, and that's usually where you get into trouble because you're just talking too much.
Yeah. Yeah. What about fonts? Can we talk about fonts a little bit?
Yeah, sure. First of all, as somebody with not great vision, y'all are too much with your fonts. So script fonts, so the ones that are like look like
Yeah.
cursive, those are really, really hard for
Hard
people
to
like me
read.
to see, especially if you're using a lighter color or anything like that. But you also have to have a pretty static uh, font hierarchy. So I use this font, this big bold font for my H1. I use this font, which is like a slightly softer script font for my H2s. And then for like an H3 or just like smaller copy that you want to call out, it's this thinner copy. I would only use 2 to 3 fonts at most. I see people going hog wild and doing so many things. Um, and then your paragraph copy can be whatever that needs to be, but uh, please do not use more than 2 to 3 fonts on a page, period. Like
Yeah.
it gets a little ransom notey at that point, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
just like all the little cutouts. And visually, especially for people who are in like the wellness space, you're gonna have a lot of people with like compromised vision. They might have screen readers, they might be elderly. And anything you can do to just make it a lot easier for them to navigate the site is huge.
Yeah. And from a branding perspective, we should, as businesses now, this is not something that you have to have before you start your business. This should not be a barrier to entry for you to start. At some point, though, you should get like a branding document of some sort where you have like your primary font, like Latasha's talking about, like that goes in your H1. Because if you're going to do graphics or you're going to do email, like you should stay consistent with your font, right? And then you have the secondary font that goes along with your primary colors, secondary colors. And then this way, if you're going to print something, if you're going to do a new website, if you're going to do graphics, like everything will match, right? And what happens when you start to do that is people start to recognize your brand, whether that be, everyone recognizes Coca-Cola, although Coke has started to, they do some regular print now, but they used to have like the Coca-Cola, which was like in
Or
script,
yeah.
right? So, and they're red, right? And everyone knows that Pepsi is blue. So, things like that in terms of branding. I don't want anyone to be like, oh, well, I need to get this now before I start my business. No, you don't. But at some
Mm-mm.
point, you will want to stay on brand because it does get confusing
Yeah.
to clients to have all sorts of stuff on there. So,
Right.
okay. From a from like this, I don't think readers recognize or clients looking, customers looking at your website, but are there some things that we can do in the back end of the website to make the customer journey easier? Like, are there things like where their eyes should follow, like where you want to put
Mhm.
your calls to action, things in that nature that, again, it probably is subconscious for the reader, but we can optimize
Yeah.
that. What are some of those?
Yeah. Um, so buttons where you can put them to book a call, book a class, schedule their assessment, whatever. Um, on every page there should be a call to action above the fold. So we were talking about the H1 earlier, like the big copy at the top of the page that's like homepage, about page, or about Pilates in the Grove, whatever. There should be some sort of call to action above the fold or fairly close to above the fold,
Okay.
fairly close below the fold. That's like, hey, book a class, or hey, love what you see here, connect with us today, or whatever that is. Adding a button, not a link. I see so many people being like, click here if you want to talk to us, and it's a tiny font and it's not a button. The buttons are very easy to add with most like website templates. So I can't obviously get into like the nitty gritty there, but uh, add buttons. Don't just bury it in a hyperlink in a sentence.
Yeah.
I will also say that every page needs to be, you need to know what the call to action is on your pages. So your homepage is going to have a couple more CTAs, calls to action. It's going to have a couple more than like, your booking page. So your homepage is going to be, here at la 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 la, we offer you XYZ. Learn more about our services here. And I can link to your services page, or I can link to your multiple services like individually. It's going to say, here we have a team of expert PTs who are specialized in orthopedic medicine or whatever that is. Click here to learn more, and that goes to your about page. And then you might have like a new client special offer, and that goes to like your new client page or whatever that is. Like there might be multiple places on your homepage where they click out, but you get to your homepage, or sorry, your about page, and where are they going to go? Well, the whole point of an about page is to tell them like, you want to work with us, right? Like we're the best, we're the coolest, click here to book with us. So that would be like your call to action for your about page. And then you get to your services page, and the whole goal is to just get them to book a service, whether that's an assessment that you need to have before you put them into a care plan, or if you have individual services that they can just book a la carte. It's up to you. Um, and then there are things like your contact page. The whole point of the contact page is to get them to contact you, right? Like whether it's via email or call or fill out this form, give them options to like contact you. But just know what you want every page to do. And every page, somewhere, somehow, some way, should give them a way to work with you. I also see this a lot where people put on their about page that they don't have any calls to action to like work with us. It's
Mhm.
just here's our bios. Okay, well, what are they going to do with that? Like, yeah, sure, they can like go bounce to the services and your contact or whatever in the navigation. But if they hear like, okay, so, Krista traveled the world with Barnum and Bailey Circus and works with just circus performers, and I'm a circus performer, and I'm thinking, holy shit, that's great. I want to book you right now. There's no way to do that right there. So I'm going to have to navigate. And it's just like that one split second where you lose them in the friction, right?
Yeah.
Of, oh, I had to look for this a little harder instead of like, oh, that's it. And I need that. If there's anywhere on your website that you're looking and you're like, right here is where I want people to take action, add a button there that gives them that exact action. You can have too many buttons, right? You don't want to have a
Okay.
button for like every line of copy. Okay. But everything that you feel like is a major point of friction for them, like after they read this, they're probably going to want to book me. Put that button there. And if you read a section, you're like, I can wait another section to put a button. That's okay too. But make sure that you just eliminate any. I think people assume like, oh, well, they know they can go to the menu and do
Right.
that.
Right. But they
People
don't.
do, they will, but like make it so much easier for them because the customer journey just gets that much better when you do.
Right. And people have so many other options right now. So like if something's not working on your site and it's taking too
Yeah.
long or the link is broken or whatever, they're just like, I'll go do something. People,
Yeah.
you're right. People don't have a long attention span anymore.
No.
So
Well, and unfortunately, they will assume that, any broken links or anything on your website that takes too long to load, they're going to assume that that's kind of how you treat your work.
right.
And I know that that's never the case, right? Like being on the back end of businesses, I'm like, no, we just forgot to check the website for 2 weeks. Okay. Like it's
Yeah.
nothing personal,
Yeah.
but your ideal client wants to have like a concierge feel. And part of that is the website.
Yeah. No, for sure. What if do you ever have people who's like, okay, my goal of my website is not necessarily to get people to book. My goal is to educate my people. Like then obviously their CTAs will be more in line with education or awareness, right?
Yeah. So with that, I've worked with people who are very much like my practice is full. I just want to keep my name out there. I just want to keep, building my like SEO presence. I want to build like my name in the industry, all those things. That's totally fair. Good for you. And your CTAs would still be, you could still go to your booking page. Like it never hurts to have a wait list of people. But you could also say, at the top of your homepage where it's, let's say you do like PT after cancer treatment, right? So it's like, here at blah, 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 we offer resources to help you, with your recovery after chemo and radiation and all the things. They would have a link to their blog that says check out all of our free resources here, or maybe download a checklist or whatever that is to get people into the free funnel, right? I would still argue that even if you only want to like educate and inform, that you still want to capture people's email addresses as much as
Okay.
possible. And the same goes for us, right? Like we still want to have like, hey, get on the newsletter because I'm going to be talking about Pilates for new moms or whatever you have. But for people who are strictly focused on education, I would still be focused on list building as well. And then throughout the website, it's, about us, why you're qualified to share this expertise. And then it's, come back to the resources page and see all the great information that we've gathered for you. Contact page could just be, hey, we only accept bookings for podcasts or speaking engagements. We are not, booking clients at this time, but make sure that, your website does what you want it to do for you
Right.
on every page.
Yeah. When you say there are websites that can have too many pages, what do you mean in terms of like that? How is that not a negative? How
Yeah.
is that a negative?
Well, I will say that it's pretty good to have one page for every service or treatment or whatever that you offer, unless you can only write one line of copy about that. So I
Got
see
it.
this a lot where it's like, we offered dry needling, and then it's like dry needling services are offered at, PT rehab center, da da da, book, book now. That's not serving anybody because it doesn't tell them what dry needling is. It
Mhm.
doesn't tell them why they need it. It doesn't tell them when you recommend it. It doesn't tell them why they trust you to do it. It doesn't tell them about state certifications, things like that. Like there's so many things there that like it's good in theory until you don't execute on it properly.
Right.
I will also say I see this so much. I see like a question page, like an FAQ or a Q&A page on PT sites. And I think this is like a legacy thing from like PT website companies, like branding companies or web design companies that have done this, where it's like, why are you cash based? Do you accept insurance? What should I expect from my first visit? Things like that. You do not need a standalone Q&A page anymore because your copy should speak to all of those points.
Okay.
It's okay if you need to have it, like if you get those questions a lot, I get it, have it. You don't need to have it in the navigation. You can just have it as like a private link.
Mhm.
Um, but especially if you're like cash based, that should be like a speaking point in all of your copy to say this is the value in a cash based practice like this. This is, we don't go through insurance because we're allowed to, create custom care plans for you that really help you recover, things like that. I see that. So the Q&A page really just like bring that copy into that page into your copy. I see testimonial pages, which I think are okay, but I've also seen like multiple testimonial pages. So it's like reviews, testimonials, case studies, things like that. You don't need all of that. You could just do like, reviews or something and just have all that on one page or sub pages in the navigation. And then the other thing that I have seen a lot is people, if you work with an SEO agency, this happens a lot. They will tell you, oh, well, you need to have a landing page for every city that you serve. So if you're in Dallas Fort Worth, every suburb of Dallas Fort Worth is going to get their own landing page, which is absolutely insane. I get it because it does drive traffic, but you don't need to have all of those pages in your navigation. It would just be like a private link that's, people
Got it.
land on it and then they're like, oh, they're close to, far north Dallas. Click there and I can book a class or whatever it is. Um, there's a lot of pages on your site that I feel like people don't know how to use their website. So they'll create like, oh, we won, local best Pilates studio in Miami. And then they have a page for that when it should have been a blog or it should be on like their, like accolades, like, you know, if you have like featured in, you know, all these pages. I feel like people just create pages on their website to then share that link, which is fair. Like if you don't know how to use your site, I get it. Um, but you know, just knowing what should be a page versus what should be a blog, I guess, is another thing. So
Well,
pages are the, you
talk
know,
about that.
home,
Yeah, I'm gonna
about,
go
yeah.
ahead. Talk about the
So
difference between what should be a page and what should be a blog. I'm curious.
yeah. So pages are like the core of your website. So it's your home, your about page, your services, contact page, testimonials. If you have any digital offers or like you have freebie or anything like that, those are pages. They live on your website. But your blog is this little like thing that's like attached like a balloon to your website. And it's like, ding. So you just like, usually for most websites, that's a WordPress site that's attached to your website. And WordPress basically hosts the blog. And your blog are things like those educational pieces that you were talking about earlier. So why, you know, women in menopause need to be doing strength training. Why patients with scoliosis need to sleep with a, you know, cylindrical pillow instead of a flat pillow. Or 3 things you didn't know about your ACL recovery, things like that. Those are blogs because they are educational pieces that you can link out to, but they don't need to live on your main site in terms of like navigation. It's not going to be like blog and then like 18,000 blogs drop down in that menu. Your blog lives on like a separate, for lack of a better explanation, your blog lives on a separate cloud than your
Mm,
website does.
got it.
And that's okay. But your core site needs to have the basics of everything. And then your blog is the thing that you add to, however often you add to it. That is still attached to your site. It can still drive SEO to your site. So that's really valuable. But yeah, I think that's probably a big error is that people are adding pages to their website instead of blogs.
Got
So,
it. And what happens when you get that like 404 message page? Like, why is that not a good thing?
well, for one, people are thinking, I came for this particular thing and I can't find it. And what the F? Um, Two, it means that you have moved something and hopefully you have a replacement URL, but you didn't redirect it. So a lot of times, like you'll add a page and then you're like, well, I have this different offer, or we've changed this offer, or you know, I created a new URL for this page, or whatever it is. You need to redirect that page to the new URL so that it just automatically pushes people to, oh, I think you meant this. So, like for us, we had a content planning spreadsheet that we had a freebie to, but we discontinued that and we made it a content planning training. So essentially, it was like, this is a new landing page, this is a new offer, but I know that it's essentially similar to what people would find if they accidentally found this old spreadsheet link.
Got it.
So we redirected that to the new URL. So now people, when they, if they find this legacy link, they still get directed to something that
Yeah.
is what they asked for. But if you don't do that, and you know, 404s happen sometimes, like websites break, shit happens, whatever. You can add little buttons to your 404 page that are like, hey, if you meant to get to the blog, click here. Hey, if you were trying to find our services, click here. That's a super easy way to get people back on track without them being like, well, can't find it. Toodaloo.
So is the 404 page, is it the same 404 page that goes out? So like if I clicked on uncanny home or whatever, and that's not the link anymore, it's the same 404 page. So I can take the 404 page in my website and put something on there and it will be the same one whenever a link doesn't work.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
So every website will have just like a /404 page. Like
Got it.
automatically the internet is like, this page doesn't exist.
Yep.
You can update that. You can update
Okay.
and customize it, and that's super handy. For us, we're like, hey, do you mean to navigate here? And then if they're like, no, none of that, we have a cute little like surprise, and then it takes them to one of my favorite scenes from Buffy on YouTube.
Yeah,
Like it's okay to have a little bit of fun with it, to be like, oh
you can be
shit,
funny.
sorry,
Yeah.
lost you there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now what is your feeling on if you're going to click a link that it opens in a new tab or not opens in a new tab?
I always prefer it to open in a new tab because it's going to be people, the way people navigate is they don't go back the same way
Right.
that they used to. People are going to be, they're going to go look and be like, what was that thing that I was just on? And it also kind of disorients them. Like if they're like in the middle of the page and they're like, okay, I just want to click this and have it open here. And like some people who are really particular like me, they know to like right click and hit open a new tab. But if I'm on my phone, it's very hard to do that. But yeah, so that's kind of how that works. And we always recommend that pretty much everything is open in new tab.
Right.
If there's ever a time where you're like, this is just going to take them to a whole new site, open it in a new tab. So like
Always. So
if you're
anytime they're
using a source
leaving,
or anything like that,
yeah, especially if they're going to leave your site. So if you're like
yeah,
clicking on if they're going to click on your Instagram button, that should 100% open in a new tab. If they're going
yeah,
to, if you backlinked somebody else's blog in your blog, that should open up in a new tab.
correct. Yep.
All of that stuff. Yeah. And by the way, people, you can do this. I mean, I know in Kajabi, you could do it very easily when you set up a button. It says open in a new tab or not. I try to do all open in a new tab, which is why I always have 16,000 tabs open in my computer. Okay. So we spoke about the homepage. Also can you speak a little bit about like the about page and how the about page is about your clients and not necessarily about you?
Yeah. So this is definitely a hard one because it's about page, like about me. But again, to like the way I was talking about the homepage with the branding, instead of saying like here at, Pilates PT Rehab Center, we offer this, we do this, la la la. We want to change it to you. That's the same with the about page. So generally, like a good rule of thumb is I like to have like the mission or a form of the mission at the top of the about page. So it's, Pilates is for everybody. And
Mhm.
here at Pilates in the Grove, we make that happen or something like that. And then it gets into self-identifying language. So, whether you are, 65 and just starting to exercise for the first time, or you're newly recovering from, surgery, you just had a baby, or you just want to move in, a fun community way, Pilates in the Grove can help you do that. Things like that, where it kind of like gets into like the things that you specialize in, who you serve, and also just like this element of wellness, right? And then it gets into, maybe a little bit more about your studio or your practice. And then it gets into more about your technicians. So whether it's, hey, we have these highly certified Pilates instructors, here are their bios, or we have this PT, here's my bio, things like that. If you're a solo practitioner, this is where it can say, I believe that, Pilates is for everybody, and I'd love to help you find out why or whatever. And then you can just get right into your bio to say, like, I graduated from here. I, traveled the world with Barnum and Bailey circuits. Uh, that would be so fun. Things like that. You can get into like your bio more directly if you're just a solo practitioner because people want to know you, right?
Right.
Versus if you have a bigger team, they're just like, I just want to make sure that everybody there is like that I can work with them and trust them and all that stuff. So, and then at the bottom of the about page, it's, we want to learn more about you. Please contact us here. Please book an assessment, constantly bringing it back to them. Most
Right.
of your copy on your website should say you versus I or we, just to kind of remind people that like you're there to serve them.
Yeah. Um, okay. Let's talk about, well, let's talk a little bit about SEO. So SEO stands for search engine optimization, which basically, I guess in basic terms, is how people find you on the interwebs, right?
Yep.
So can you give us some examples of how, again, let's just talk brick and mortar, how brick and mortar businesses can optimize their SEO without necessarily spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on like an SEO company to do it for them. So like what are some really easy tips and tricks, even if they're not the ones implementing, that are like must-haves for a local brick and mortar studio?
Yeah. So have a different keyword for every one of the pages that you've got. So you have your home page, your about page, one services page, or multiple services pages, however you have that structured. Pick a keyword for each of those pages. Make sure that that keyword is relevant to what you do. Don't just like, oh, well, I know that like Pilates in the Grove is a keyword because, Krista's place is so successful. Make sure it's relevant to what you do, right?
Can you give
Choose
me an
one
example
keyword.
of that?
Yeah. So let's say you do pelvic floor therapy in West Virginia.
Okay.
That's a keyword right there. Pelvic floor therapy is your keyword.
Okay.
West Virginia is what we would consider like a keyword tail. We want to make sure that you're being as specific to your location if you have a brick and mortar as possible. So for you, I think the Pilates in the Grove homepage is best Pilates studio in Miami, Pilates in the Grove. So that
Okay.
was, it's like best Pilates studio Miami was the keyword. And then on the services page, it's, you know, Pilates classes in Miami, Pilates in the Grove. There's like a vertical dash there. And that, so the reason you want to have a unique keyword per page is because you will cannibalize your own results. Like, so Google will be like, oh, they want this page scanned for this keyword. Oh, they want this page scanned for this keyword. And like the
Got
bots
it.
cannot compute. So they're just like, they're going to bounce out and you're not going to index for anything. That's why you choose a unique keyword. That keyword needs to be reflected in your meta title, which is, you know, on the tab where you see like the little title of the tab when you're on a web page, where it's like,
Mhm.
you know, on your browser, you see the little title of the tab. That's your meta title. Your meta description is the thing on Google that's like the little blurb. You can customize these, or Google can crawl it for you. I recommend that you customize them. It depends on your website tool. If you're using WordPress, make sure you have the Yoast plugin. If you're using Wix, I'm so sorry, you're going to have to Google it. On Squarespace, you can go to your SEO settings. If you're using Showit, you can go to your SEO settings. So like there's all these different ways that you can like update this. Kajabi also has SEO settings. Um, but you're going to want to update your meta title and your meta description on every page to include that keyword. You're going to want that keyword to be in your header. So that H1 that I talked about, you're going to want it in at least one H2, which is like just a subheader on the page somewhere. And you're going to want it in 1 to 2% of the words on that page. So if you have 500 words on a page, I'm going to pull up my calculator right now because I suck at math. You need that keyword 5 times, not just on the header, but like in the copy. So like in your little paragraph text, you need that keyword 5 times. The reason for that being is that that's just SEO basics. These are things that like Google has told us helps your page get indexed properly. I will say that it's not always perfect and it can take months for your website to get crawled properly. So like don't give up if you're like, I'm not on page 1. Um, keep working on it. It's
Yeah.
okay. Keep updating your copy. But make sure you have your location on that page multiple times as well, because that's also going to influence. Google is very smart, right? To say like, okay, well, we've already got 10,000 pages, you know, indexing for Pilates. Oh, but this says Pilates in the Grove. And then it says Pilates in the Grove, Miami. So then it's like, okay, we're indexing for anything that's searched for Pilates Miami, Pilates Coconut Grove, Pilates Miami Studio, things like that. Like it's finding all these other sources to say like this is connected to this. And the more that gets clicked, the more it gets reinforced. So continue to drive traffic to your site, all these things. But those are the SEO basics. And again, you can go back and listen to our podcast episode about that because I do go a little bit more in depth on that.
Right. And I think it's just important to recognize. I mean, so if what Latasha said is like, holy shit, I have no idea how I'm going to fucking do
Yeah.
that. Like, no
Sorry.
problem. You can hire people to do that. However, if you're not doing that, in theory, you're leaving money on the table. Right. And it's
Yeah.
something very simple that we can optimize to just say, you know, hey, we need to make sure to have our location prominently on our website, right?
Yeah.
So it's something easy, simple to do,
Yeah.
right? And it is a slow burn. So if you're starting to build it, so let's say someone is starting, like they're just new, they're starting their website, or maybe they had no SEO at all and they're starting it again. And I know there's no right answer, but what are you telling your clients? Like we have to give it 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, 12 to 18 months for us to really see the efforts we're doing now in SEO work.
My dog is barking.
That's all right.
Um, so I will say it's going to take at least 3 months for you to start to see
Okay, great.
showing up on higher on local search, right? So I think one of the things that people think is like, well, I am already showing up on Google Maps, so like I'm good. Google Maps is unique to your address. So like, yes, it will still pull you. It doesn't mean that people are finding you in search the same way. So 3-ish months is when you're going to start to see your website show up below the map. So like if I looked up Pilates Studio Thornton, where I live, the first thing that's going to pop up is all of the ads for Club Pilates down the street.
Right.
Whereas, I'm working with a local Pilates studio. She does it out of her home and she didn't have the proper SEO stuff. So now she's getting that. And now we're seeing her right below the Club Pilates, right below it. But before it showed up on the map. So she was like, no, I'm good. And I'm like, no, because you're not
Yeah.
showing up till page 7.
Yeah.
So if people don't see the map, they're not seeing you.
And people don't, I mean, even if they see the map, they're not always looking at the map. They're looking at the
Well,
first
and
three
sometimes they don't
things.
know how to use the map to look at your
Right.
listing either.
Correct. Correct. That's the issue too.
And they don't see, they're looking at proximity, right? So like if I was only going on proximity, I'd be like, Club Pilates is right down the street. Whereas
Right.
this lady is 0.25 miles further, but it's in her home. It's like, I love her. I love her way more, like all
Yeah.
the things. So make sure that you give it at least 3 months. And if you're not seeing your stuff show up, talk to a professional, because I'm pretty sure there's something with like indexing going on with your site. They might have other updates. You could be using like, so I see a lot of people just like resizing their font instead of using actual headers. Things like that can happen.
Oh, got
So
it.
you don't just make the font bigger, turn it into an H1.
Turn it
Uh,
into an H1. That is actually really, really good information. Yeah. It's actually listed as an H1. Okay. What about people? This just popped up into my head. So, what about like for me, for example, I have multiple locations. What about people that have like 3, 4, 5 locations? So, what do
yeah,
they do in terms of how can they intersperse their location throughout their site without
yeah.
being like overwhelming, I guess is the word. How would you work with a client like that?
Yeah, so I would definitely make the location options a feature on the homepage and the
Okay.
services page and any like sub services page that you've got. So for like Pilates in the Grove, we have Pilates in the Grove, Coconut Grove, we have Pilates in the Grove, South Miami on the homepage. So you can like
Yep.
see those two locations, their addresses very clearly. If you have multiple locations, like let's say you have like a chiropractic office or you have multiple locations where you operate out of, you can also have a locations feature on your menu that drops down and it's like, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, Miami, South Miami, like whatever that is, and just list all of the places there. So they can immediately click on that location, see where you're located, learn more about your services, all of that. And I would be optimizing services that are unique to those locations.
Okay.
So I think for you, for Coconut Grove, you have the rejuvenation services there
Correct.
and not
Yep.
at South Miami, right?
Correct. Yep.
So it could be something like sauna blanket, Coconut Grove,
Mhm.
uh, Theragun services, Coconut Grove, things like that, where it's like very specific to what you do so that you're pushing clout there.
Yeah.
Um, and then, if you have different instructors at each location, having different bios for them at each location to say, like, here's the staff that you'll meet at this location, here's the staff you'll meet at this location. Because if you do have like a diehard student or member or whatever, they're going to want to know, like, okay,
Yeah.
well, Susie moved to this location. So now I need to go learn more about that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good, we get that question a lot for people that are growing or having multiple locations and how do they optimize for that? So, okay. If you had to give your top 5 things, just 5, that every website should have, 5 things that you should 100% have, what are they going to be?
Individual pages. So I see like the endless scroll pages websites happening a lot. So it's like instead of a home, so it's like pilatesinthegrove.com. That's home, and then it's pilatesinthegrove.com/about. Instead, people just scroll to different sections. So if you hit the About Us section, it just scrolls you down further on that
Got it.
page.
So put
I
that
see this
into a
happening a lot.
separate page.
They need to be separate pages. I get it. Like if you're just getting started, I get it. Like do whatever you need to do. But if your goal is to grow, you need to have separate pages because those are separate opportunities to optimize for SEO. You need to have one H1 on every page, not 2, not 4, one H1 on every page. They need to be coded as H1s. You can change that in whatever tool you've got. There are different features that you can format content. So you highlight the line, you go to the little formatting button, and you drop down,
H1.
click H1, and then you're good. Only one of those per page, and it has to have your keyword or your business name or both in it. Okay,
Okay.
got it. And then there needs to be subheaders, H2s, at least 2 of them per page with a variation of your keyword. So like for Pilates in the Grove, The H1 is, you know, best Pilates studio in Miami. And then the H2 is come see the difference in our Pilates classes or something like that. And then it's, you know, book your Pilates class at Pilates on the Grove here. Something like that, where it's like every section has like a keyword, but there are multiple sections. So they're H2s. Again, you can drop down that menu, click H2. Those are sections. It makes it easier to browse your site, easier for Google to crawl it. Number 4, your about page. You need to have an about page, and it needs to be catered to your audience, not to you.
Okay.
And 5, I'm going to die on this hill. I want people to have a way to book you without
Yeah.
calling you.
Great. Love it. Love it.
For your sanity and for theirs.
Awesome. Yes. And they should, which also means for most of us, they should have to pay online, because I don't recommend booking
Yes.
people without paying. So
Right. And if you, so I know that a
I
lot of
mean, if
people
you
have like
do a
paid
discovery
assessments.
call, if you do a discovery call, it's one
Right.
thing. Make it a 15
Right.
minute, and you can automate those. You can use Acuity, Calendly, you know, especially online businesses. A lot of them are like, have book a free call with me. Fine. But like, if you're booking a service, they should have to pay or at least insert their credit card to reserve the service. So, you
Yep.
know, make it easy, make it easy, make it easy. Make it
Correct.
easy. There's lots of online scheduling softwares now out there. Again, you can use Jane, Acuity, Moments is what we use. Walla, they're great. Arquetta, um, you know, a lot of people use MindBody. Not a big fan anymore, but you know, there's ways. There's plenty of things you can do to get around. So I like those.
Yeah.
So we say every page, like the main pages should be separate pages. Okay. So home, about, services. Okay. Then each of those main pages should have an H1 header. So your header should be coded as H1. All right. Then which include your keywords and location. Then subheaders, which I guess like you could say like back up or reinforce your keywords.
Yep.
Then you said your about page should have be about your clients, and then 100% have a way for people to book you.
Yep.
Yeah. And then, you know, there's lots of other stuff, but those are the 5 main ones. And by the way, most of us can get those 5 things done by ourselves. I mean, a lot of website builders now make it relatively easy to figure out how to code it as an H1. It's not a matter of you knowing how to do it. It's a matter of, is this the best use of your time? So if you're starting a business and you don't have any clients, maybe it is the best use of your time, but most of us are underwater when we start already. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah. We are going to link, Latasha did an amazing, course for us about how to SEO like a pro. And we are going to, it's on my website. We're going to link this in the show notes. So if you want like a step by step kind of with screenshots and everything, she's always really great at her presentations. We're going to link that in the show notes. I'm also going to find the podcast we recently did about search engine optimization, because that would be great. If you are interested in joining the inner circle at our next enrollment, which is going to be sometime in the summer of 2024, Latasha is really integral into that program. She does one of the monthly coaching calls where we talk all about copy. I thought and content. I thought the call you did last week was really good. I thought it was a lot of questions about you know, how we can use our social media without letting our social media use us, kind of thing. And I just thought you gave some really good examples. So she does a coaching call each and every month. And she also does a copy critique for everyone. So if you're like, what the fuck is a copy critique? Basically, people will drop something, some copy. They'll do like, this is the landing page I want to put on my website, or this is the email I'm going to send to people when to promote my new offer, or this is a social media caption I'm going to use for like this promotion. And they basically drop it to Latasha and she critiques it for them. She gives them feedback. She usually sends them a Loom video and says, you know, the call to action isn't clear, or I'm not clear on what action you want me to take? Or if people submit blogs, it will be like, hey, your keywords are not in the first line. This title is too, we say this all the time, clever is not always clear. So being clear is more important than being clever. So she's really valuable. And I think like these are the things in business that really hold us back because we don't know what we don't know. And Latasha's a business owner herself. She's a female founder of a business that's growing. So she also understands what it's like to be a business owner.
Oh
And
boy, do I.
yes, she does. And so she can empathize with that, you know. And I also think one of the reasons that she's so valuable to our industry is because you have been a customer, like a client on the other side. So you are like, I don't understand what idiopathic means. I don't understand. And
Yeah.
I would be your ideal client and I don't understand what that means. Right. So she's
Yeah.
very good when it comes to that. I just love Uncanny. I can't say anything bad about it. She's like one of the most professional people I've ever met in my life. And she speaks my language of like prompt response. And she doesn't mind when I'm like a chicken with my head cut off and I'm all over the place. So tell
I think that's the first
everyone
time anyone has ever called me professional. So thank you.
you are professional. In professional, I mean, by the way, that's my term of professional. Like professional to me is like you're responsive and you get your fucking job done. Like that's being professional. Like when there's a due date, there's a due
Yes.
date. It's not me chasing you down. And ain't nobody
Highly
got time for
professional in
that.
that sense.
Yeah. Ain't
Yes.
nobody goes near you and your Enneagram one are like all about being on time. But tell people where they can go find you and where all the loveliness of Uncanny lives.
Yeah, so you can find us on our website at uncannycontent.co. There's no M because I'm too cheap to pay for it. And then Instagram at uncanny content.
Yeah. And they do these amazing things that are called, what are your intensives called?
Strategy intensives.
Strategy
So our
intensives.
strategy
Thank you.
intensives, we plan out 3 months of content for you. If you do, YouTube videos or you do blogs, emails, social, whatever you do, we'll plan out 3 months of that for you with full on prompts. So if you want to do a reel once a week, we'll plan out your reel for you. Say, use this audio, use this text, do this in the video. This should be the caption, things like that. If you do blogs or YouTube videos or whatever, will help you plan out what goes in those. And then we send it over to you to approve. You approve it, and then we, send it out into the world and you start to create the content. But the whole goal is to focus on your strategy for the quarter or for the 3 months that we have you. But yeah, it's really great. If you want to see those are also available on our website.
Yeah, they're amazing. She basically anything that you see that has words associated to it in the Pilates and the Grove or Krista Gurka brand, that's Latasha and her amazing team at Uncanny Content. So, all right. Any final thoughts, my friends?
I think the big thing is there are so many great website templates. So don't get overwhelmed if you're like, I don't know what should go on what page. I don't know where the button should go. Get a template, spend a few $100s on it, use that, and then just make it sound like you. And it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be more complicated than that.
And it can change and get
Oh,
better over
absolutely.
time. Yeah.
We update
Several
your we update
iterations.
your websites every 3 months. Yeah.
Yeah. Several
Yeah.
iterations. And as you come into your own authentic voice and figure out what works and what doesn't work, like you can change it. It's not set in stone. So,
Yeah.
all right, people. Thank you, Latasha. I always love talking to her. I talked to her several times via Voxer, but anyways, this is now putting out into the public. So until next time, my friends, bye for now.